Good evening. I believe we are live now and ready to start our virtual meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the February 23rd virtual regular special, no, it's a special meeting because what we did last week. Special meeting of the Meridian Township Board, called to order and ask for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll.
Okay. Supervisor Steichoff,
I'm here.
Treasurer DeShane,
Present.
Clerk Guthrie is here, Trustee Jackson,
Here.
Trustee Opsimer,
Here.
Trustee Sunland,
Here.
and Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
All board members are present.
Thank you very much. The first item that we have on our agenda is a presentation that is the findings of the Local Officials Compensation Commission. Will Abby be doing that?
Yes, Supervisor Steicha.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I have for you the findings of the Local Officials Compensation Commission, otherwise known as the LOCC. The LOCC consists of 5 members that meet biannually to determine the salaries of the township's elected officials, including the supervisor, the clerk, the treasurer, trustees, and park commissioners. I am reporting the official findings made at the public meeting on Friday, February 19th, 2021. The determination of the commission for 2021 and 22 was filed with the township clerk on Monday, the 22nd of February, and will be in effect 30 days following its filing unless rejected by the township board with the 2/3 vote. Attached to my memorandum is the determination of salaries for elected officials for 2021 and 2022. It says 2019 and 20, so I apologize, that will be corrected. And the compensation survey data that was used for the determination. So as it goes for the letter to the clerk, shall I read it verbatim or how shall I proceed?
How long is it?
Well,
I mean, you could summarize if it's possible.
sure. Yeah, I can summarize. Basically, at the public meeting on Friday, the 19th, it was determined for the township supervisor that effective March 21st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, that the township supervisor shall be paid an annualized salary of $23,084 and flat, no change. Effective January 1, 2022, the annualized salary shall be increased to $23,545. For the township clerk and township treasurer, effective March 21st, 2021 to December 31st, the township clerk and township treasurer shall be paid an annualized salary of $76,741.74. And effective January 1st of 2022, the annualized salary shall be increased to $78,276.57. Moving on to the township trustees, also effective March 21st, 2021 through December 31st, the township trustees shall be paid an annualized salary of $11,617. And effective January 1 of 2022, the annualized salary shall be increased to $12,117. And finally, the park commissioners, members of the park commission for the years 2021 and 22 shall be paid $50 per meeting, either work session or commission meetings, with a maximum of 24 meetings per year.
Thank you very much. Is that the sum total of the Recommendations?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, was that the sum total of all the recommendations?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, unless anybody has any comments, we will move on with the agenda. Any board members have any comments? I don't see any. All right, then we will move on to citizens addressing agenda, non-agenda items. And do we have any citizens?
There are several people in the attendee area, and we can, of course, always take public comment via 517-349-1232 for those watching via home TV or one of the other internet streams that we have. If the people in the attendee area wish to raise their hand using the raise hand feature, we'll know that they wish to speak at this time.
Are we getting any raised hands?
There are no raised hands. There are no telephone calls at this time, sir.
Okay. All right, then we'll also mention that at the end of the meeting, just before we adjourn, there will be another chance for public comment. And anyone who wishes to either call in or is part of the attendee area, they certainly can raise their hand at that time and be called upon for 3 minutes of public comment. Okay, we will now move on to the township manager's report. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, board. Just a few things to go over tonight with you. The amplified deer call, we are nearing the end of that process. At this time, we've taken 275 deer. We have a goal to get to 326 through the DNR's program, approved program. We have 51 more to go. We hope to get that accomplished in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I want to thank the police department and the parks and the public works team for all their effort to make this happen. It's one of the #1 complaints that we get in the township about the number of deer that we have. You remember the Woda Cooper development that was approved by the board well over a year ago. That project is now moving forward. The site plan is in and it's going through the community development department. We'll hear more about that eventually as we move forward. You're going to hear about a rezoning on Jolly Road that's in front of the Planning Commission. The public notices went out 3 or 4 days ago. We're starting to get calls. You may as well. If you have any questions about that, we've tried to give you as much information as we have at this time, but that will be in front of the Planning Commission on March 8th. We received notice from the MSU Credit Union that they'll be amending their facility plan on Central Park Drive, mainly through the drive-throughs or the drive-through. On March 2nd, you'll hear your first update from all the work group assignments that have been given. The teams will be providing a very brief 2 or 3 minute update to the board as to what we're doing, where we're going with each of those. March 1 is a bid opening for the ice skating, the synthetic ice skating rink that's a part of the marketplace. You remember that part of the component of the project. That bid opening will occur on March 1st. And we're expecting those bids to come in as a 100 by 40 synthetic ice that we'll be putting down at the marketplace. Came across an idea out of Sault Ste. Marie that I think is worth exploring. It kind of comes on the heels of the pantries that the board is currently looking at. And that's our free sled program where you put sleds out. And we're looking at maybe North Meridian Park. So people who come there who forget their sled or may not have the ability to purchase a sled can come there and use the sled and just put it back. So we're looking at some sort of program like that. It probably won't happen for this year as we near spring, but certainly for next year. I think it's a really neat concept. Walnut Hills nearing demolition of the pool house and the clubhouse. And finally, I met with citizen Cecilia Kramer last week about a food pantry, and we're moving forward working with that through the clerk's office, through Clerk Guthrie and others to make that happen. I know that there's a second food pantry at the Faith Lutheran Church, I think it is, on Dobie Road, and that's been approved through Director Kieselbach's office. So we're moving right forward with the board's direction on the food pantries. And that concludes my report, Mr. Supervisor, unless there are any questions from the board this evening.
Any questions for the manager from any board members? I see no hands. I think you're home free on that, Mr. Walsh. I want to just mention that this food, mini food pantry or small food pantry idea is a wonderful idea. Some citizens, together with our clerk, brought that forward. She's been working hard to have it happen, and through the emergency order that was approved by this board that I issued last month, we're able to do this. And hopefully people in need who can't get to a food bank at a time when they really need some food can access these, and others who have plenty are able to replenish them. The idea is like a lending library, those little ones that you see around the township. This would be places where people could donate as well as take out if they're in need. So we're looking forward to seeing those around town, especially during this COVID. Of course, that's what they're for, to get us through this. Okay, our next item is board member reports of activities and announcements. I want to mention first that as a matter of courtesy to other board members and the public as a whole, I hope that you will turn off your cell phones or put them away someplace so that you don't get distracted from the business of the township. Board members, anyone want to make a report? Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you, Supervisor. First of all, I wanted to make a comment about the food pantries and what Cecilia Kramer and others are doing. That's really important work, and we would like to be proud of here in Meridian. We also see in our packet the charity bingo the Oklahoma Community Church is doing to encourage donating to those in need right now, and different ways that people can get involved with meeting the great needs that many in our community have. It's just remarkable. Our churches do so much for this community, and it's good to recognize them for what they do. I wanted to give the residents and the board an update on taxes. We've gone through a pandemic. Unemployment is twice what it was a year ago. These are hard times for a lot of people. Of course, that left us concerned about what our tax roll would look like, both for the summer roll and the winter roll. And I'm really glad to report that our taxes collected are 99% of what they were last year. This was as of February 17th, which is the day after taxes were due. So we were at 99% of last year. For the summer taxes, we're even closer. We were at 99.9. So we're only 1/10 of 1% off, but we are 1% off, which works out to about $500,000. Just a bit of a background with property taxes that aren't paid as of March 1st get turned over to the county treasurer. The county treasurer then essentially writes us a check for that amount of taxes that are delinquent. And then the county treasurer spends the next 3 years trying to collect those taxes with, of course, adding penalties and interest to that. So it's not a good route to go. So people should please contact us and pay what you can before March 1st if you are delinquent now. The more difficult taxes to collect are the personal property taxes, and those we collect ourselves. Those are approximately where they were last year right now as well. So good news, our taxes are being paid at virtually the same percentage as last year, just 1% off. And it's also good news that our residents are coming through this and able to pay their taxes, and we're grateful for that. We're here today. We have our township services that they are today, as well as many other services across the county that our residents pay for with those tax collections. So I want to thank the residents of the township who pay their taxes on time. We're in good shape, and grateful for people paying their taxes on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other board members? Yes, Clerk Guthrie.
Supervisor Stika. We have an election commission meeting tomorrow night, and the election commissioners, it's at 6 p.m. Invite everyone to join. The election commissioners will be looking at possibly having 4 precincts located, 2 precincts located in one location and another 2 precincts located in another location. I want to thank Deputy Manager Harry and his staff for meeting with Oklahoma schools and looking at the Wardcliff School and the possibilities of moving the polling location out of the Meridian Service Center and into the Wardcliff polling locations. So we would have 2 polling locations there. There's been a number of complaints from election inspectors in the past and from voters with the confined space that's at the service center. And so we want to make sure that we are servicing all of our voters appropriately. And so we looked at Wardcliff as a possible location. So we'll be looking at that tomorrow night. And then we are also looking at taking the polling location out of the Meridian Senior Center and moving it to Kinawa with the other precinct that's located there. And we will be moving it out of the cafeteria. And if you've been in Kinawa, if you've been here a long time, you know the cafeteria area. You either have to walk up the stairs, then walk up the ramp, and then go back into where the cafeteria is, or if you're in a wheelchair, there's a door that you open that leads to a utility room where there's a ramp, and then you have to go out of another door and go up a ramp and then go into the cafeteria. And so we met with Okemos Schools and looked at the Kinawa Gym, which is right outside the door. And it's much more conducive and convenient for anyone with accessibility issues. And the parking lot is much closer than the parking lot at the senior center. And so it's just a much better location. So we'll be looking at that tomorrow night, and then we will make a recommendation to the Ingham County Clerk. And we'll also be reviewing the post-election procedural findings from the county clerk. We'll be looking at her recommendations for what Meridian Township can do to provide better election administration services to our voters. And so I invite you to join and watch. And if you have any feedback that you would like to give me, I would love to hear from you. And I just want to give a shout out to the city of East Lansing and the city of Lansing. They have been helping us out tremendously in sharing their training materials with us. And we brought former city clerk Marie Wicks on this morning to work on our training material, and she'll be redoing all of our trainings, and everyone will be retrained, and including all of the staff. And she met the team today, and we're very excited to have just the regional support. And I know I've said this before, and I'm probably a broken record, but I'm very appreciative of everyone helping the clerk's office.
Thank you. I want to mention that our clerk is now just about at the end of her first 3 months on the job, and she has obviously jumped in with both feet and her full head and is working very hard at the whole thing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other board members, any reports? Yes, so Courtney Wazinski, please.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just a few reports. I'm excited to attend my first election commission meeting this Thursday. In addition, on Thursday, we also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion meeting, so a follow-up meeting for that task force. Environmental Commission will meet on the 3rd of March. Their last meeting, they shared that we've received 4 letters of interest for green grants for schools from both Hazlet and Okemos schools, some of those including rain gardens, nature trail, greenhouse repairs, butterfly friendly plantings, things like that. Granger's offered $1,000, and other businesses have also offered to potentially match some of those funds. So that's exciting. I volunteered to be on the committee for choosing those grants for the local community. So that's really exciting. Other than that, we did have a using social media for environmental change presentation. So that was a good presentation, give us some good ideas on how we can really get the word out about environmental concerns and or great things that we do here in Meridian. Only other update is we did have a Groundwater Management Board meeting in February, and they're looking to support the a geographical survey. So Deputy Director Perry could probably speak a lot more articulately to this, but apparently we just don't have a great map of all the wells within Michigan per se, or nationally, I believe. And so they're looking to write a grant or get some funding to be able to update that geographical survey. And so it's mostly county wells. It will affect Meridian, and they're looking for some letters of support. So that was exciting news that they have that endeavor underway. That's all I have, Supervisor.
Thank you very much. I could tell you that well abandonment is an issue statewide. Back in my days, the Attorney General's office with my clients, among others, were the people who regulated wells. If you don't abandon a well properly, you open up the groundwater to some serious pollution. So it's a very important issue. I'm glad to hear that they're looking at it. Anything else? Okay, yes, Trustee Opsmer.
Yes, I would just briefly note for the board, the ZB, or I'm sorry, not the ZBA. The Land Preservation Advisory Board is talking about renaming some of our land preserves in the township. If you go to the advisory board's February 10th packet, there's kind of like a subcategorization of prospective names for each of the current reserves. So if citizens or if board members have any thoughts or input on that, you might want to visit the February 10th packet and just take a look at the prospective names. We've spent probably the last 2 months just developing conceptual ideas, and this came from Jamie Hiller, our Land Preservation Advisory Board member. This was kind of her undertaking. The general impetus behind it was some of the preserves are not, very well known to the public, and when you use their name, you don't really get a sense of where in the community that might be, things of that nature. And of course, some of the preserves do have naming rights from families and former residents who have donated that land. And so all of those naming rights would be preserved and kept in perpetuity. So anybody that wants to weigh in, please take a look. And the Land Preservation Board is doing kind of a doodle survey at some point here to kind of prioritize and get a sense of which names are most popular. And then one other note, now I can't remember. Oh, I spoke to the Planning Commission last night. They were, the one agenda item that they had before them was the auto dealership amendment that this board referred to them back in December. And that is my report. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, we will move on to our approval of the agenda. Would someone like to make a motion? Trustee Wazinski.
I move to approve our agenda.
Okay, is that support? Supported by the treasurer and Ms. Jackson. All right. Any need to bring anything off the minutes or anything like that? If not, we will take a vote. Clerk Guthrie.
All right, Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Opsmer,
Yes.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
7-0.
Okay, we have an agenda, and the first part of that agenda is the consent agenda, which includes communications, minutes from the February 2nd virtual regular meeting, the bills, and the Lake Lansing Road and Dawn Avenue sanitary sewer benefit charge. Can I have a motion? Treasurer.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Support.
Voted by Ms. Jackson. All right. Is there any need to pull anything off? All right, do we need a vote, clerk?
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Opsmer,
Yes.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
He's trying to understand.
and Supervisor Stika.
Yes. Mute button is sticky for all of us. Okay.
Approved 7-0.
All right, we now come to hearings. We have no attorney here, so we're going to hearings. The hearing is on the Powell Road paving public improvement SAD. I believe, is that Mr. Perry? Are you going to lead us on that?
Absolutely, sure.
All right.
Good evening, Supervisor Syka, members of the board. As the township board's aware, resolution 1 and 2 have been passed to hold a public hearing for the Powell Road paving. That project is about 1,600 feet of new asphalt from Grand River North to the Silverstone development. The project cost is $460,000 estimated at, and a portion of that, the developer will be covering 56% of those costs. However, there is a portion that would be returned to the developer, and those would be recouped through special assessment process. And again, tonight is the public hearing in regards to that. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an opportunity for the township board to receive comments in favor and or objections to the proposed special assessment district. And so the board is aware, David Straub from Mayberry Homes, I see he's in the attendee slot. So if you have questions for the developer during the discussion portion of the agenda, he should be available for that too.
All right, right now we're dealing with the public hearing. I'm opening the hearing at 6:25. One out there from the public who would like to be heard on this issue, which was the Powell Road Public Road Improvement SAD number 43. This time, please communicate with Mr. Geebies. Let us know that you want to speak.
You can, of course, yeah, and we do have one person raising their hand. I'll remind them that they should state their name and address at the beginning. And first on the list will be Gary Londroche.
Good evening,
Gary,
Supervisor.
start with the name and address, and then tell us what you want on this issue.
Yeah, Gary Londroche. I am with the Lafontaine Automotive Group, 4000 West Highland Road in Highland, Michigan. I just wanted to say, naturally, I'm opposed to this SAD. I find it very unusual that after undergoing an extremely long, arduous, drawn-out process for us to get approvals in Meridian Township, I know that David Straub and the Mayberry Group had a condition on their approval that they had to pave the road to Grand River, just like we had conditions on our approvals. So I found that when he learned that we were coming down the road with a project in front of you, he suddenly pulled out of his development, put the brakes on it, and somehow got you guys to include a portion of that pavement as a condition on our development. Unfortunately, due to circumstances of COVID, we were just uncertain with what was happening in the economy. It just didn't make sense for us to proceed forward at the time. So we have since pulled that project from the table. And now we're faced with an SAD. Even though our properties have Grand River addresses, we'd be forced to grunt over $100,000 of this cost. And I just don't understand what the process is. And it just makes me wonder what Mr. Straub has in a relation with the township board or somebody on the board to be able to divert his responsibility for this original paving and have that spread out on the other. And I guess my understanding is residents who live on the road are not responsible if they're a full-time resident who would be benefiting from this the most. So I'm just wanted to have it on public record that we are against this and we feel like there's something a little bit funny in this whole process. Thank you for your time.
Oh, okay, we normally do not like to hear from people with accusations of that kind, but this is not the time for give or take. So we'll wait and see what our conversation is later on when we discuss this. Is there anyone else that wants to come forward during the hearing?
We're not seeing any other raised hands, and we have had no telephone calls, sir.
Okay, then I will declare the hearing closed at 6:29. Okay, we will now move on to our action items, and the first one is the ratification of Brownfield Redevelopment Authority appointment. I had a recommendation for an appointment because we had a resignation from the EDC seat on the Brownfield, and making a recommendation that in accordance with the careful wishes of the EDC itself, that we appoint Brenda Chapman to serve out that position through 12/31 of 23. Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Deshane.
Yes, I move to appoint Brenda Chapman to the Brownfields Redevelopment Authority.
And I saw Jackson's hand up. Was that a second?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to discuss on this? Mr. Deshane.
I've served with Brenda for, I believe, 3 years now on the Economic Development Corporation. Brenda has been an excellent member of that. She's attended every meeting, read the packets, and has brought a lot of her past experience in state government and dealing with grants in particular, and financing to the EDC. Has been a very useful, helpful member of the EDC, and I'm confident she'll be the same on the Brownfields Redevelopment Authority. We're fortunate to have her willing to serve on the BRA.
Anyone else? Okay, then we need a vote. Clerk Guthrie.
Okay, Trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes, Treasurer Deshane,
Yes.
Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
and Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Do you have a 7-0?
Yep, 7-0, motion passes.
Thank you. And while we're at it, I want to thank Jade Sims, who had served on the Brownfield Authority, but she was also chair of the EDC. Her personal fortunes have grown and expanded, and she's moving away from our township for a position that sounds like it's going to be wonderful for her. And we're going to miss her. She worked really hard on all the different things that she worked on in the township. But we welcome Brenda to the role of Brownfield Redevelopment Authority rep. Okay, we're now moving on to Fire Services Agreement, Allen Township. And Mr. Walsh, are we going to be calling on the fire chief? He's shaking his head yes. Fire chief, Mr. Hamill.
Good evening, everybody, Supervisor Stika and board members. So the 3-year agreement expired as of January 1st. And Delhi Township sent us a new agreement. The agreement will carry on from the 2020. So if you remember back in 2018, our response to Allen Township, we cover part of it strictly for fire response. Started off in 2018 at $700. And then in 19 it went to $800, and 2020 went to $900. And the command car would be $90, and then every hour after the first hour, it's another $600. It brings in roughly around $30,000 a year to the general fund. Their next 3 years, they want to stay status quo of what the 2020 fee was. So the contract is on the agenda for your approval. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, questions for the fire chief on the proposed contract? Chief Hamill, keeping the price the same, how does that work out for us in terms of our budget? I heard the amount of 30,000, whatever, but just in general, how does it work out for us in terms of what we put out and how much we spend, et cetera?
Well, for the most part, our calls up there, we have a couple fires a year up there, and then that's with automatic aid with Delhi, and then Mason usually comes in. So it really doesn't affect the responses are, it's unknown every year how many times we're going to go in there. We do go in there on some medicals, and we just bill for the medical calls on that. We don't bill with this particular contract. It's strictly for fire and wires down and things like that. So it really shouldn't change a whole lot. on average, we make about 30,000 annually for the last 4 years.
And that well covers what we expend?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's really where I was trying to go earlier. I said it clumsily. Treasurer DeShane, you had your hand up?
Chief, if we've done any comparisons as to what other larger townships or municipalities have charged smaller townships for similar agreements, we done any research on where we stand with these agreements?
Have not. I'm not sure of any other. A lot of departments have automatic aid, so I wasn't here when this contract was put into place. So I don't think this is a normal thing. I'm sure there's some out there, but with automatic aid and mutual aid, normally that's what happens. But the intent with this contract, Delhi didn't have the resources to cover that specific area of Aladdin. So the contract was put in place between us and Delhi, and then Delhi holds the main contract with Aladdin. So I can do some research on that and get back with you and see if I can find anything. But I think this is a good thing because, like I said, traditionally it's probably automatic aid or mutual aid covering these areas when they're busy and they can't take them. So this just takes the burden off of Delhi and benefits us to a degree annually.
What I'm hearing what you're saying then is this is kind of a bonus that because of automatic aid, we would be down there anyway. Is that correct?
Correct.
No reason for this to hang around, Mr. DeShane? You're happy with what you heard?
I'm content with those answers. I don't want to hold it.
Trustee Opsimer,
I move to approve the agreement between Delhi Charter Township and Meridian Charter Township for fire and rescue services within Aladdin Township, and authorize the township manager and fire chief to sign the agreement.
very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Jackson. Any further discussion? All right, then we need a vote.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
trustee Jackson,
Yes.
clerk Guthrie votes yes, supervisor Stikka,
Yes.
and treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
very much. And thank you, Chief. All right, we're now going on to section 13 of our agenda, and 13A specifically. This is the discussion area. And the first one is the Powell Road paving, public road improvement, SAD, that we had a public hearing on earlier. And we heard about it from Mr. Perry prior to the public hearing. And we're now ready to talk about it as a board. We also heard from a member of the public. Who wants to start? Don't everybody fall over themselves. Yes, Treasurer.
I'll get this discussion started. I too take exception to the commenter earlier implying that there was some kind of back deal made with Mayberry Homes on that. That's an offensive statement, and I'm offended by it. We're putting this forward because we think that's good public policy.
You cut out, Mr. DeShane. At some point, you got muted.
All right.
You had just said it's good public policy, and then we couldn't hear you.
I believe it's good public policy to provide a special assessment district for this road. It benefits all that will access it, including the Lafontaine, which will eventually be developing this. We would hope. They have clear cutted some beautifully forested area of the township, and we've heard that's the complaint we've heard from our residents is how we let that happen without to then have the project go south. So that's the issue before me right now is how that happened. And again, I would appreciate the commenter do some more research before making baseless allegations against this board. Thank you.
Hey, anyone else? Trustee Jackson.
I believe we had an objection in our mail from the New China Incorporated at 4714 Powell Road. Is that a part of the record of the public hearing?
We certainly did receive it. I saw it today earlier. Clerk Guthrie.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Jackson, for bringing that up. She did contact me today, and I promised her that I would bring this up during the meeting, and promised her this was sent to us on Sunday evening, I believe, if I look at the date correctly. And so I explained to her that we already created the packet and that I would make sure that this was included in a future packet and raise her objection up during the meeting. So I thank you for doing that on her behalf. She said she probably would not be able to attend the meeting, and it will become part of the official record.
And can you summarize it very quickly what her objection was?
Yes, she said, we are writing to object to the Powell Road special assessment. Our objections are attached along with the hearing notice for your reference.
And
I don't know if you want me to go.
I saw that.
I promised her I would raise the issue that she was objecting to it. But the notice, basically she attached the notice of the hearing to it, and then she had half a dozen items that she was objecting to.
Okay, yeah, I saw it, and I know you saw it, and I know Mr. Shea saw it. Did other board members have a chance to see this so that we know that she was fully heard? I see a yes from Ms. Wazinski. Ms. Jackson, okay. So she could feel that she was heard, all right. Any other comments or concerns? Who wants to talk about this issue? Anybody? Ms. Jackson.
So could I ask Mr. Perry if he can speak to the objections in the letter, if he's seen the letter?
I have seen the letter. We can try to go through some of those. One of the points she raised or was concerned about was, I guess it was a question why the 25 lots in the development, which is known as Silverstone Way, were not included in the special assessment. And I guess in short, the answer to that is the developer is paying for that 100%. In fact, he's already, he's paid for half of it because they got the first level of asphalt down. So if those costs would have been rolled into the special assessment district, it just would have increased the cost. The percentage necessarily wouldn't change it. And this way he's paid it 100%. I think that's what her question was in regards to that. She talks about the overall cost and the proportion of the cost that her property would be bearing. And again, what we do with these special assessments, it's based on frontage percentage, and that's how we distribute those. We don't, with water and sewer, sometimes we do it different by number of connections, that kind of thing. But with roads, we typically stick to the frontage. So I guess that would be the response to that. The third point was back to, there was 4 homes, and then I guess it increased to 25. And again, I think that goes back to the point where the developer is paying for the entire Silverstone subdivision, including the frontage on Powell Road. So I guess that's, I'm not really sure what the point they're trying to raise with that one.
So your point is that the charge, or the use charge or whatever that would have applied to those homes is not a part of the special assessment district because they've already been paid for.
Correct, right. The developer's already paying for those 100%.
Right.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, the fourth point was regarding owner occupied properties. And that goes back to when the developer initially talked about paving the road. He had reached out to some property owners along Powell Road and offered to pay for their assessment. And we wanted to memorialize that language in the special assessment district. So that's why that shows up in there, so that it is, again, in the actual special assessment district language that the developer would be paying for those parcels.
Ms. Jackson?
And the reason that provision does not apply to 4714 is that that's being used as a rental and thus does not qualify as a residential.
That is the, I guess would be the logic behind the developer, why the developer did not offer to pay for that property's assessment.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yes, trustee Obser.
Deputy Manager Perry, so can you just clarify the way that the assessment, the special assessment that's applied to each parcel is based on their share of the road frontage or their percentage of the road frontage on Powell Road as applied to the total cost of the paving, correct?
Correct.
And so even if Silverstone Estates was broken up into all 25 parcels, the frontage remains the same based on those 5 lots that front on it.
Correct. That's how the total estimate was broken down based on the frontage of Powell Road, which again, if Silverstone Way would have been included too, the developer would have had 100% of that frontage costs. But so in essence, they've already paid for that. So that's why that portion of the road wasn't included.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes things more confusing or not, but we really focused on Powell Road itself, the frontage.
Yeah. And then I don't think Principal Planner Menzer is with us. Is Director Kieselbach with us tonight? Yeah. Mark, so I had a question. The board never saw the site plans, but the site plans for Lafontaine, did they have an ingress and egress proposed on Powell Road?
Yes, they did.
1, 2, how many?
Just one on Powell.
Okay.
You know, again, they had 2 parcels, one on the east and one on the west.
Okay.
So an entrance for each of those.
They had 1 parcel on the east and 1 on the west of Powell Road?
Right, just north of Grand River, they had both sides of the road.
So they have 1492 Grand River as well?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay. Oh, I do see that now. I do see the ownership being the same. Okay, that is helpful. Thank you. And the ingress and egress was to which one, the east or west?
They had, if I remember right, they had egress from both parcels onto Powell Road.
Okay, so 2, 1 for each parcel.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then final question, this I guess could be Derek or Mark. What did the provision say when, was it the rezoning that the Powell Road paving was conditioned on, or was it the final plat approval? I forget.
My understanding was the Silverstone was a condition of the rezoning. But Mark, feel free to correct me, but I believe that's what my records show.
Yeah, it could have been the rezoning. I remember that it was a condition of the preliminary plat. So it could have been added on both, but it was, I know for sure it was added on to the preliminary plat.
Correct, yeah, it was a part of the tentative preliminary plat.
Right.
It was conditioned on the plat, which makes more sense because the township can compel the condition in that instance, not having to wait on the applicant to offer it. Okay. I would be interested just to see what it said. Going back, I don't recall exactly how it was conditioned, but those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. DeShane.
Yes, Mark, can you tell us if the lots 1, 2, 23, 24, and 25 are yet developed?
No, they're not. So we haven't, if the question is building permits, we haven't issued any building permits for those.
So for the resident who wrote the, asked why the lots weren't being assessed, that's the answer. The developer still owns those lots, and the cost of the SAD will certainly be added into that, those costs, those lots when they're sold. So the person that will buy those lots will be paying for the SAD just in an indirect way.
Right.
When I built the house in 91, cost of the lot was the cost of the road, the sewer, the drain, all the development in virtually all new neighborhoods in Meridian Township are borne by the developer. We don't go in and build roads. We don't go in and put in sewers. Those are turned over to us, developed, and it's the homeowners who are purchasing those lots who are paying that cost. Is that a correct understanding of how new development works, Mark?
Well, in this case, until the developer has final plat approval, he can't sell any of those lots, so technically he owns them all.
But the assumption is he's going to eventually be able to sell them, or he wouldn't be developing them.
Right.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Perry, is there anything further that you can comment in terms of, we had the one person who commented during the hearing itself. Anything there, anything else that needs to be commented on or replied to?
I don't believe so. Again, I think through the discussion, it was brought to everyone's attention that Lafontaine owns those two parcels there, the 1492 and the 1510. And during their discussions with the board about developing them, and of course they developed that parcel to be development ready with the removal of the trees, created more of a commercial ready parcel there. So I think the board's aware of their frontage on Powell Road in Grand River.
Right. Oh, Mr. Walsh, you have a comment.
Yeah, maybe I can summarize. So the caller came in, cut down about 300 trees, made promises about developing, and then didn't develop and left actually some of the homeowners in the Central Park Estates who used to look at a forest. Now they get to look out at Grand River. They own two parcels. They were going to pave a portion of Powell Road. And now we've got somebody coming in who's going to invest and actually follow through on their plans and build 28 homes and pour millions of dollars into development into the township. And they're willing to share and pay their fair share of Powell Road. And they're fulfilling their promises they made to the township, contrary to the caller. So, and I just want to address the issue of shenanigans on the part of local government. The only shenanigans that occurred were clear cutting of property and promises made that were unkept. So that's a summary of what's happened in the last year and a half, if you want to get right down to it.
Very, very well said. Thank you, sir. Trustee Opsmer.
Yeah, and the other thing that I looked at to build off of the manager's comments, those parcels are all zone C2. So the parcels on Grand River have very high value, and it's, if anything, the one resident living at 4714, I do have some empathy for because they are zoned rural residential. So if anything, the one thing that they did note, and I guess this is more for Mayberry, if they choose to reach out to that resident, they did give what they believe to be their estimated current value of $126,000. It's not clear if they're talking taxable value or the actual market value, but I'm guessing it's market value, just based on the property and how it's developed currently. So I would say the costs borne by that homeowner are pretty significant, and there's no commercial prospect for them in the future, but these other parcels adjacent on the corner of Powell and Grand River Avenue are C2 commercial. So they do have an interest in the infrastructure in the area and the ingress and egress. So, and then one final thing, I did look up the provision from the Powell Road plat, and it simply said, Powell Road shall be paved from the northern extent of the plat southward to Grand River Avenue in accordance with the requirements of the Ingham County Road Department. And paving roads through special assessment districts is the standard practice in the township. We always pave roads for the first time through a special assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, well said. Anything else? Then we'll have this on for action at our next meeting. We now come to the citizen survey for 2021. 3 years ago, we conducted a survey, as we have every 3 years for. And it's that time again to look at it for 2021. And we have some information in front of us. Who wants to get this conversation going? Anybody for administration?
Good. I will take it.
Well, okay, go ahead,
I will
Amber.
take it, Supervisor.
Director Clark, go ahead.
Sorry, I think there's a small lag being in my office here at the house. But good evening. So again, we're here to discuss it's time to do a community survey. We do this every 3 years. And the last time we had this discussion at the February 2nd board meeting, some of the board members requested examples of other communities that do not use the National Research Center as their avenue for the survey. We included 2 examples. One is a familiar city from some of our staff here in St. Joe, and the other is from East Lansing. And you'll see that East Lansing is a telephone call, which I think is kind of interesting and something that maybe we'd be able to do here in the community. But staff is aware and is willing and kind of eager to see some change with the survey. We'd be able to ask more direct questions and have input from trustees as yourselves and also staff to ask specific department questions and get information that could be utilized to better plan using our budget and budgets per department.
Okay, is that it? Okay, all right, I will make one quick comment, and that is our attempt in the past is to have this survey be as valid as possible, which means that we've hired people that use so-called scientific methodologies when they do the survey. And a telephone survey doesn't really come up to that, so I would not be too interested in just doing a telephone survey. But, all right, who else wants to talk on this now? Yes, Mr. Deshane.
Question for Manager Walsh and Deputy Manager Perry, who I'm assuming were familiar with this or when this survey got started. I didn't see okay, this is from the year 2007, is that correct?
2006.
Okay. The question would be, what did you do to make sure you were asking statistically valid questions that would show up well and give you valid data back from it? Did you rely on a statistician or a survey consultant or company that helped you design this? Or what was how did you put this together and how did you test it for validity?
Well, the straight answer on that is we had a work session with the city commission. There were 5 members and the department heads. And we came up with what topics we wanted to cover. We wrote it ourselves and we mailed it ourselves. And we took in the results and tabulated the results ourselves and then reported it to the community. There was a numbering system on each one, so you couldn't duplicate, because obviously if 2 number 400s came in, there was a problem. But that's what we did. We did not get it validated by any professional. Yeah, that was the process, and it worked for us. It worked extremely well, and we used it in several areas, and that's how the new ice hockey arena got built there. It was by the choice of the people through the survey.
The thing I didn't add to start off before I ask that question is I like the survey. I think it asks a lot of really good questions and gives you really granular data on town, or in your case, city services and top priorities of residents. I think you cover a lot of ground here, and I think this kind of data from Meridian would be extremely valuable for all of us to have. Obviously, we're going to ask some different questions, but I found it really helpful. Manager Walsh, can you tell us what kind of response rate you got or you averaged when you sent this out? How many did you send out, and about how many did you get back every year?
That varied depending upon I think it was every 3 or 4 years we did it. It varied on if there were hot topics at the time, the response rate, but the lowest we received was somewhere around 14 or 15. And in 1 year, we got up just over 20%.
You mean 14 or 15%, not 14 or 15 people.
I hope so. Yeah,
right.
percent.
Well, it was unclear from the way you said it. Okay.
Yeah, we could do the survey right on the screen then.
Yeah, we don't want the minutes to say 14 to 15 when it's a percentage.
Right.
Anything, all right, Ms. Jackson, you had your hand up.
Yes, my comments mirror those of Mr. DeShane's very much, because I too like the specificity of and the deliberateness of the questions and the organization in the St. Joe example. I am interested in how many surveys how many documents did you send out? And the relationship between the number that you sent out and the population at that time. If you could tell me that.
Yeah, the population, Madam Trustee, was around 8,000. I think the population now is down around 7,300. But at the time it was around 8,000. And if I recall, the registered voters, to answer your other question, we sent it to every registered voter. Everyone had an opportunity to return. And I don't know that number, I think it was around 35 or 3,700 registered voters. And everyone had a chance to respond. They all had a numerical number on them to prevent any duplication. And the reason we did that is one of the things, and I'm not a survey expert, I know Trustee Wazinski knows a lot about surveys, but the one thing I do know, I learned from doing it the wrong way. And that was, we found the feedback we received in the first year, I think it was 1999 was my first survey there. When you send it to only the man of the house, or it's very offensive to the partner or the wife, or so we learned we need to get a cert, because you get a call, which one of us do you want to fill this out? Well, we never thought about that. We switched after that, after a lot of complaints, backlash would be a better word. We decided to send it out to every registered voter.
I actually like that idea a lot better, and I think the strict statistically valid or highly standardized statistical validity becomes most important when you're comparing against other organizations and other groups. And so in an instance like this, I don't think the rigidity of statistical design is necessary for us to compare, to gauge our community. Only maybe if we want to do the same kind of thing again 3 years from now. And then, so the bottom line is, I like this kind of survey, and I'm kind of interested in trying something new for a change, trying something different. And I think that we, working together, we can get a lot more information from our residents, our voters, than we can glean from this standardized survey that we have been using every 3 years. And it may be more useful for us.
Yeah, that brings, I will just, before calling to somebody else, we're talking really a trade between something that's very customized and full of the information that maybe we in particular are looking for, with being able to compare from survey to survey. One of the reasons why in the past the board has stubbornly stuck to using the same company, the same basic survey with some customized questions at the end, but only a few, has been that it wanted to see its progress with regard to various issues. And for example, you know, the roads have been the #1 issue for, gosh, how many of those surveys? 4 or 5 of them. And, you know, probably if we put out that same survey again, roads would show a great improvement in how we've done. And maybe we can figure that out without necessarily having that, you know, same survey done over and over again. That's just a thought. Ms. Wazinski, you were next.
Thank you. I would concur with a lot of what has been said, and except for that I'm an expert on surveys by any means. I work with experts, but I am by far not an expert. But I agree that, you know, the standardized survey gives us that control, right? It allows us to compare ourselves against other communities. But what are we looking for? Is that what we want? We've already been voted 3 times the best. So thinking about something like that, I liked both, specifically St. Joe's survey, asking very specific questions that I think could be very useful to Meridian. For example, they, how many bikes do you have and what do you use them for? So those are kind of things that can help us make decisions, you know, going forward. That's just one example. And they also categorize the importance of some of those issues. So, you know, how important is this to you? So that helps you identify, you know, some of that, the measurement of importance. So I really did like that. I think I would agree with the supervisor that the telephone survey leads to a lot of concerns. There's, you know, people that are doing the survey have to be well trained, and just, and quite honestly, that format was very confusing to me. But I did like some of the other demographics that they included there, like voter status and education attainment and things like that, which I know we have some of that information already. So all in all, I do like the idea of having a much more individualized type survey. My one reluctancy is that, and I think the supervisor touched on this as well, and so did Trustee Jackson, you know, developing a survey, you want to make sure that you're not introducing bias. And we naturally introduce bias when we write a survey question. So I would really, really suggest and support having not necessarily an agency, but at least an expert that could help us or help you, Manager Walsh, and your staff develop a survey that's unbiased. Because if we get a biased survey and it's crafted, you know, poorly, quite honestly, we're going to get unreliable feedback. And what is that going to do for us? It's not going to do anything good for us if we really can't take that information and interpret it in the way it's meant to be interpreted and then apply it. So that would be my biggest, I don't even want to say concern. That would just be my suggestion, is that I really like the idea of having an individualized survey. Not sure we need that control or that comparable component, but we can still evaluate long-term if we ask the same questions over and over, us going forward. So we can really still use that information. But I think we need somebody that is an expert to help guide, to make sure we ask the right questions and we interpret them correctly.
Yeah, and I would agree with on that comment about the expert, which, you know, I originally raised. I think it's important because, you know, this is a highly educated community, and people up till now, when we say, well, this has been a #1 issue or #3 issue, you know, because in our surveys, people's go, yeah, we see that, because they know we've used a scientific survey. But if we do something that doesn't quite live up to the standard, our public will know it, and they will throw that at us. Anyone else? Yes, Trustee Opsolin.
I would concur with the supervisor and Trustee Wazinski's remarks and Trustee Jackson's remarks, and I expressed my support for looking at doing it, doing our own survey at the last meeting, so I stick with that. I do think having some kind of expertise at our disposal for crafting it would be beneficial. And I'd be interested to glean from a statistician on a survey like this, mailing it to both parties in the household. So I know that phone surveying is always, you capture one individual per household. You might on occasion capture a second, but I guess you really wouldn't, because typically, well, if you were doing cell phones, you might capture both spouses, but not commonly. And so I don't know if that skews our sample, because then we would have a lot of households that have one spouse who fills it out would likely have two spouses that fill it out, while other households that don't complete it or and send it back are completely unrepresented. So I just wonder about that statistically, but I haven't dealt with mail surveys. I completely get the issue of mailing it to just one person in the household, but it could even be addressed to the household at large, the blank and blank family or the blank family. I know addressing can be very delicate, having done bulk mail in the past. So I'm just not, I don't know the answer to that. I just know that in phone surveying, especially landline phone surveying, you're only going to get one person per household. So I'm just not sure if that is going to skew the sampling. And then the only other thing I would caution against is if we're scoring capital outlay, you know, especially if we're scoring neighborhood parks, I guess I would just, my gut instinct is we should stick away from scoring like specific park improvements, because we do have neighborhoods of disproportionate size, and that's going to skew the number of respondents that associate or affiliate, you know, desire for certain neighborhood parks to be improved, but things like Central Park and things like that. So there's just a lot to think through, but I do support doing it on our own. And I think the St. Joe survey does show us that, you know, the specificity will be a lot more beneficial to us. And I would ask the manager if he has any other comments that he would like to share with the board.
Well, before we do that, I just want to mention that in partial answer to what you were expressing, Mr. Osmer, it seems to me that nowadays, you know, if ever, you really can't think that the two voters in a household have the same kind of thought patterns. And I don't think, if anything skews it, it's sending one to a household where maybe one of them grabs it and fills it out, and that may be totally different than what the other one thinks. I think the approach that Mr. Manager Walsh mentioned of every registered voter is a good one. Mr. Walsh, you were asked to make some comments.
If you want to, it's up, Mr. Supervisor, it's your meeting, but I think your clerk raised her hand first if you wanted to take her.
Oh, okay. Well, first, did you have any comments with regard to what Mr. said?
Just that you hit the nail on the head. I received a lot of feedback, and it wasn't positive, and it was my decision, and I took a lot of criticism for, if you think I think exactly like my spouse and we can fill this out together, it was brutal. So we did it differently after that. I can assure you of that, for that very reason.
Yeah, this segues into, it sounds like we're going to have a consensus here to do our own survey, which obviously is not going to be just the St. Joe survey. It's going to be our survey with our questions. You know, how do we craft it? Who gives us the proposal? And then how does the board input into it? Those are all things that need to be looked at. In addition, you know, we have an issue right now that's very important to the township, and that's the adult use of recreational marijuana. And it seems to me that this is a prime opportunity to find out what our community thinks. Guthrie, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Supervisor Stajka. I agree and concur with other sentiments regarding the validity and the scientific analytical data being captured by this. We have a highly educated community, and I want to ensure our public that this is not a biased survey, and that it is one that is professional. And you're all professional and fantastic Meridian Township employees. But there is, like Trustee Wazinski was mentioning in regards to professional companies that conduct surveys, there is a difference. And so I appreciate the the number of questions that would be looking at specific questions addressing what Meridian Township would be looking at, as opposed to a standard nationalized, everyone gets the same kind of question things. And so I really appreciate that approach. Some of my questions include which questions, as I look at the surveys that you provided, which of these really are not on our current survey and that are pertinent to Meridian Township that you want to have on Meridian Township survey? Not that I want sort of a rhetorical question, just kind of something to think about, like what would be taken from this and what would be taken from the current survey that we would keep. So I'm trying to understand in my mind what, because this is obviously much more in depth than our current survey. So I'm trying to understand in my mind what from this we as a board would really like to know, in addition to the current questions we've been asking and or replacing the current questions that we've been asking. And then my other question is, and this is, I'm assuming, looking at the memo, that the lead person on this will be Director Perry and Director Clark, and that there's possibly a baton being handoff here, just so the board kind of understands, that and where that's going in regards to, Township Manager Walsh and his staff. And then who decides, and the reason I want to know that is because, I'm questioning who decides the issues to ask and the questions to ask. Is there going to be a committee on this? Is the board going to, my experience in the past is that Director Perry presents the National Citizen Survey to the board submits 5 or 6 or so questions that they would like to see if Director Perry can include it in the survey and votes on that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So I have a question about that, and I think you already addressed some of the other questions that I had, and I think Supervisor Stika also asked a question about frequency and those types of things.
Mr. Walsh, should you answer that, or do you want Ms. Clark to answer that?
Well, it'll be a team. To answer your question directly, the 3 of us will be involved. But I really wanted Director Clark involved because of the role with the neighborhoods and stuff. I thought this was a perfect fit for her and her skill set, which is tremendous. And Mr. Perry has Solar and Rose and a bunch of other projects. But I'm going to be involved in it. And to answer your other question, I think this is so important that the board ought to set aside some time at whatever meeting the supervisor would like to do it at, and give us the topics that you want covered. And then when we get the topics covered, then we go out and find who's going to do the survey. And then they work to write the questions based on the subject matters that you have, whether it's 1, 3, or 10. And then they come back and show you what the questions would be. You bless the questions, and then the survey goes out. That would be the process that I would see going forward.
To piggyback off of what Manager Walsh said, my timeline deadlines in my head was just to bring this again to discussion to the board tonight. Action at the next township board meeting, which technically is scheduled for next week. So if not, an action in March to approve staff to create that. So we would spend time gathering information from staff on particular topics that they would like covered. We would come back to you to request the same information. And as Manager Walsh said, then have that survey compiled, and it would be brought again before the board and public to see what that final is before it's mailed. The idea that we would be able to do a mailing, but I believe in 2018 we did a sample size, and then we did an online opt-in version of the survey as well. That might be an option we consider this year. But if we don't want to do online and we just do mail-in completely, that would be the process. We would have the survey distributed about June, have an intern review the statistics and give a compiling of the results of the survey in July. And then it would be reviewed publicly in August in preparation for the budget in September.
Mr. DeShane and then Ms. Guthrie.
I think the question asked by the clerk is a good one about how we come up with the questions. And I think that, well, I appreciate the manager wanting us to come together with our questions for the survey. I think this is a great example where we need the staff taking the lead and bringing this board a template of questions would be a good start. We will all have our ideas before that meeting about questions we want to see. Maybe we see a draft beforehand. But I think the more we have staff design these questions, the better off we're going to be. No one is more in touch with all the issues in this township right now than Manager Walsh and Deputy Manager Perry. You know the issues that are before us. I think we all have full trust in you that you're going to ask a question that gets an objective answer and not a slanted answer. I certainly do. So I think you know the issues that we're concerned about. You're part of each of these board meetings. I would like to see us get some results sooner than August. I would like to see us get some results 2 or 3 months sooner, if possible, if we can move this process along. Sure, we want to have it for the budget, but the marijuana question, for one, is one that is very relevant to today's deliberations. If we get an answer in June to that, that would be more useful for us than August would be, or whatever. I want to do it in a way that gets us good data, but I don't see a reason to make this process more drawn out than it needs to be. Because Manager Walsh and Deputy Manager Perry have done this before, I trust their ability to craft these questions. Definitely, we should have some board input to those questions, and then we should have this statistician look at them and make sure that we're getting good valid answers to them. But I think we can maybe accelerate this process, or at least make the process more efficient by starting with a template from staff. Thank you.
Ms. Guthrie, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Director Clark. The timeline of the survey was exactly what I was going to ask you. And so I really don't have anything further than that. So, but thanks for calling on me, Supervisor Steiger.
Ms. Płazinski, you're next.
Thank you. I also, yes, Director Clark, you've clearly given this some thought, so that's very helpful. And although I can concur with Treasurer DeShane, I think we've got some issues that we want to get some answers to much sooner than August. I also know that to draft a very good survey and to have that validity checked prior to sending out, I think we could maybe, the timeline could come a little bit closer, but I would really lean on Director Clark on making, those decisions. And I would not say that the board have necessarily input on the specific questions, but I would like to think that the board would want to have some idea of other things that they might want to feel that's important. For example, for, health, like, let's do some, social determinants of health in the community that we don't have. So with that being said, I appreciate the timeline and the thought you've given, Director Clark, and I do also, I commend the staff. I think you'll do a fantastic job, but I do want to make sure that it's, incorporated in a way that's going to be valid and we can really use it. Just my last thoughts. I thank you very much.
Trustee Jackson.
I would just add at the end that we should all keep in mind that any survey of our current residents of their impressions, particularly in 2020 and 2021 about the township and township's operations will all be colored by their experiences with COVID and the actual social environment that we've been in. And so that may play into how questions are asked and answered. And I hope you'll take that into consideration as you construct the instrument.
Good point. Yes, Clerk.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Steiger. One final question. either Manager Walsh or Director Clark, would the boards and commissions be asked if they have anything to contribute to the survey, or just the township board?
I think the first thing we're going to do is to, based on the discussion that I've heard, is we're going to get together and get with staff and try to draft up some topics and questions and bring them to you. We will talk with the directors who are directly linked to, like, for instance, Director Clark is linked to the EDC and the DDA, and try to get some feedback. But we can also get too many people involved in all this drafting. So we will try to incorporate best we can. And I don't think it'll take us long. I mean, two big issues that come to mind. One that the supervisor brought up is the adult use marijuana, but also the deer program. You know, that's been talked about forever here. Have we ever asked the public? So those are two topics that come to mind right off the bat. But we'll do our best, Madam Clerk, to get as many people involved as we can on the topics.
Thank you.
Well, I would really like to see, and it came up at our last meeting, I would really like to see us ask our township residents about what they want to see in terms of adult use marijuana. Do they want to see it offered in the township or not? And if they do they just want to convert our current 6 locations to adult use locations? Or do they want something different in terms of a number, lesser perhaps? And I'd like to see a way to survey that. And it sounds like we wouldn't be moving very quickly in terms of getting that in a useful way if we only include it as part of this survey. Mr. Welk, any comment on that?
Well, there's two, as I look at it, there's 2 roads that you can go down on that issue. If that is of the critical importance to the board, and that's the one issue that there's 2 different ways you could go about this. Again, not a survey expert, but I've done probably 15 surveys in my career. There's 2 ways to do it. One is you could just, you know what, we want to find out what people think. We haven't had an issue like this in a long time, and we want to really find out what the public thinks. We're going to do a survey simply on adult use marijuana, and we're going to have that out within 8 weeks. Once we get a professional to write it and get it approved by the board, and set aside the big survey to next year. Set it aside. Or you can take a lot more time and come up with the 10 or 12 issues that are of importance to the community, and do that. It'll just take more time. So it's kind of like a fork in the road. Which way do you want to go with a survey? Is it a 1 question, find out on this issue and set aside the main survey to next year? Or do you want to take some more time and do your survey like you normally do? That's my only way that I can see to go forward. One of those 2 ways.
Clerk.
Well, I would not only like to ask the recreational marijuana question, but I'd also like to ask the broadband question. And I know that that's a question that the Communications Commission has been wanting to craft a survey around for several years. And I know that they're, very excited about the board and staff looking into broadband for the community. So I don't know how that piggy banks off of what Manager Walsh just said or not in regards to the fork in the road with which kind of survey to do or not, but I know that there's more than the recreational marijuana question out there for me, and possibly for residents as well, and maybe for board members.
Mr. Opsimer?
I'm curious if Deputy Manager Perry has any update on us for us in regards to broadband. Normally when we do questions like this, and again, it was just on the national survey, we throw 4 questions on. So like the last one, we had a question on the land preservation millage and a road millage, but it cited the exact millage that would be levied, the money raised, and the service rendered from that millage. What do we know about broadband at this point?
it's very, very, very preliminary. I mean, we had our first work group meeting, I think, last week, and we really focused on what is the question we need to ask, who has broadband, and how do we, survey the community. That's pretty much where we're at with it. We're not even close to being able to say this is X amount of dollars for a system that would need to be constructed or anything like that.
Yeah, so I don't think we're ready to ask anything as it relates to broadband this time. And depending on how we structured that, not knowing a whole lot, we might give the community false hope, depending on what federal and state law might even allow us to do. So we did take about 2.5 years for Derek's department to go through all of the engineering for roads, and this one's going to probably take at least that long, if not longer, because there's also an ongoing service component, not just the initial construction like with roads. That one's tough.
Guthrie.
Well, I think, and Director Perry, please correct me if I'm wrong, most of the discussion at the broadband work committee session was centered around, do you have internet or not? And at what speed do you have it? And who is your service provider? And that's what we were looking to discover, more so than do you want broadband or not? It was, who has internet? What are your issues? What are you paying? What are your speeds? What, connectivity, that kind of thing. So it wasn't really, would you like Meridian Township Municipal broadband or not? And, please, Director Perry, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my recollection of what the discussion was in regards to questioning people in the community.
No, you're correct. I mean, that's what the committee tried to discern was how do we go about, actually finding out what people have. At the end of the day, I mean, if you ask the question, would you like better broadband? Sure. And then to Trustee Opsmer's question, it's you would, but would you be willing to pay X, Y, and Z to have it? So I think there is some initial work that needs to be done as far as gathering who has what and what those speeds are. But the question about would you be willing to support constructing our own system is a separate question that needs to be asked later.
Yeah, as part of the broadband group, really at this point, the clerk is right. What we're looking for is information upon which to build the issue, not for the actual outcome or result of what we end up planning or proposing. And I'm not sure, though, that this kind of survey actually does that. Mr. Perry, are there other ways for us to find out who has what? I mean, a survey, you're going to be hit and miss. You're not necessarily going to be getting the answers from everybody.
Yeah, I guess our initial discussion that we had last week was, figuring out what the best instrument would be to gather that. There are some maps provided by the industry, and we had some concerns about, who's providing that data and whether it's accurate or not. So there were some discussions about developing, probably in conjunction with the Communications Commission, to see how we do that survey to our residents, actually picking residents in our community to say, what do you have? Are you satisfied? What are your speeds? That kind of thing, to really create our own map of what's available in the township. And in my mind, I guess it is a separate document, a separate timeline than the survey that we're talking about. But I'm just one of the committee.
Mr. Opsmer?
Just one concluding thought on that, because especially knowing what kind of speed people have would be really important when you look at Comcast. So Clerk Guthrie's point is well in there, because they offer at least 5 or 6 different speeds on the residential setting. And that has a huge impact on what they're paying. I guess my thought would be, because I take Supervisor Steicha's point, because if we're surveying, we're not necessarily, that survey won't necessarily produce the law of averages across the township in terms of the level of service. Maybe Comcast and AT&T would be willing to provide some amount of, or some level of data to us that would be actual data. I don't know if it's an aggregate and it's not household specific, they might be willing to give it to us. So that's one thought. And then I
Okay.
think
Oh, I'm
there's
sorry.
one
Sorry, I
other
thought-
thought. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
No, just finishing up my thoughts, because I'm pretty sure there's one satellite provider for broadband, and then there's just AT&T and Comcast. So I have government relations contacts. If we need them, I can share them with your office.
Thanks. Mr. DeShane, you're next.
Thank you. I think we're trying to bite off a little bit too much with this discussion item tonight. The staff brought to us the question, do we want to use our old survey instrument, or do we want to do a custom instrument? I think we've all agreed we want to do a custom survey. And so maybe then we could bring this on the next agenda and have Manager Walsh and his staff bring back to us some timelines as to when we could reasonably get a full survey back, when we could reasonably get a single or double issue survey back. And I think that would be the better way to go, because we're just guessing now, and we can't really put staff on the they didn't even know that we were going to approve this tonight. So we've told them we want to move forward with this. Let's give them at least a week to our next meeting. We're meeting again in a week to give us some more estimates and including from Dr. Clark on when we can expect to get these survey results, depending on how we do it, all at once, or do peel off a single issue or two.
All right. Any other comments on this? I think we have a consensus in terms of how we're going to, in terms of that we're not going to use the old survey company. We're going to do our own survey. We're going to focus it on our issues in general. And we're going to use the help of a consultant or an expert along the way to make sure we're not biased in terms of our questions, and then help us perhaps with analyzing at the end too. Anything else? Now we'll have this in front of us for further discussion next time, I guess, with more input from the staff, more from the direction that we just gave them tonight. Okay. Then we are done with the agenda and ready to go on to comments from the public.
Again, we can take telephone comments via 517-349-1232 and or raising your hand in the attendee area. I see that we have the Zhang family with a hand raised already. We've enabled you to speak. Please remember to unmute yourself, state your name and address for the public record, please.
And remember, you're limited to 3 minutes. We expect you to address the board as a whole, not individuals, and to be polite and decorous with your comments. With your name and address, please.
It appears that we are still muted. Remember, you have to unmute yourself in order to be able to speak.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. So, board member, thank you for your guys' services. My name is Jack. I live at 4719 Powell Road, Alchemist. Regarding the Powell Road special assessment, I just have one comment here. We have a lot of developments in these areas here, including Lafontaine's car dealer shop. And then one thing I want to share with you here is after all these developments here, and the environments totally changed, because our house is right behind the Lafontaine's car dealership here. All the wetland behind there right now all dry here. It is not wetland anymore here. And then also same thing on the Powell Road here. The trees that they cut down here, they do not plant the trees back here. They just put the grass back here. Even the trees inside our property here. So for that reason here, I think one thing is I want to mention is how do we make sure that those development can really protect the environment for our house and then also for our community here, because they will benefit for the next generation in the future here. And then I also want to say here is that Lafontaine right now, they do not build a dealership here. All the trees are cut down now. So what do we do for those property here? And then there are a lot of promise from them here. But today is all those promises are gone here. As I was told, is they will not do anything anymore here. So that's my comments for the board members here. And then one thing regarding the special assessment here, I'm against that assessment here. So because all these things they do here, they just try to build a new houses here, do their business. At the same time, they do not protect the environment here, which I feel it is not good for the community, not good for our township here. So that's my comments. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We have no other callers and no other hands raised at this time, sir.
All right. Then we come to other comments, other matters to the board. It's been communicated to me that the Planning Commission would like to have a joint meeting with this board. It's something we've talked about a number of times, and they've talked about a number of times. And at their meeting yesterday, I guess they were rather adamant that they really want to get together with us soon. And one thought I had is that our next meeting, we could at least put aside an hour and a half to have that joint meeting before we get into our other agenda items. Any feedback from that from other board members? Treasurer.
I like that idea. We did that once before. It was very productive. And Planning Commission is a really important part of our zoning process here in Meridian, and I would welcome that meeting. We rely on them very much as a township board. So I would welcome it. And if we have the space in the next meeting, we could do it then, or we could set it off, maybe move it out a month so we all have some time to prepare for that meeting. But I like the idea.
Okay. Would you rather, that's an issue, I'll get to Ms. Jackson next. Well, that's part of the consideration. Should we rush it and do it next time, or should we wait maybe a couple of meetings? Ms. Jackson.
I'm wondering if there's a specific purpose for this meeting, or a specific topic that they want to cover with the board.
A lot of things it was mentioned that they wanted to discuss or hear from us about the adult use marijuana before they start getting into it as well. Other hands? Mr. Opsmer.
They had asked us, I believe in December or November, for a meeting on form-based code.
That is true, they did. Anyone else? Ms. Guthrie.
I concur with, I don't know, I don't remember now if it was Treasurer DeShane or Trustee,
Go ahead.
Trustee Jackson, about enough time to inform the public and prepare and let them know about the meeting so that they can attend if they would like to.
I can consult with the chair as well and see whether there was really a big rush or whether we can wait a meeting or so. Nobody's adverse to having a joint meeting, that's for sure. All right. Mr. Opsmer.
We're talking about this being on our March 2nd meeting.
That was the thought, yes.
Would it proceed? Would it be a 6 p.m. start, or is it a
6 p.m. Yes, 6.
But we would have our traditional agenda like usual.
Right, 6 to like 7 or 7:30.
So the public's already informed because it's the first Tuesday.
Right. All right, I'll figure that out, and you'll all be hearing from us shortly, I guess. Okay, any other comments from the board members? Ms. Guthrie.
Thank you. Just an announcement for Home TV this Thursday, February 25th from 6 to 8. They have their virtual intern appreciation and Golden Tape Awards that are happening. So it's a little bit different. They typically, they typically do this in person, and they do it at Studio C, and it's a big red carpet event for the interns and all the time that they put into putting together stories. And so just want to let the public know and remind the board that that is happening this Thursday if they wish to support Home TV and all of their efforts that they do for programming and stories and what they provide for the township.
You said that was Thursday at 6?
Thursday from 6 to 8, correct.
6 to 8. Okay. And is that something where we've announced how you zoom in or how you participate?
It is on their website, and they have
Okay.
sent information out, so I don't know, maybe Manager Walsh could forward along again, just in case anyone needs
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other final comments? Mr. Opsmer.
So I just had a quick question for Director Kieselbeck as it relates to the constituent who spoke during public comment there at the end and just the other discussion. Mark, when does the special use permit for Lafontaine expire?
It would, I can check and make sure. I believe it's sometime this year because it was approved in 2019. So it's a 2-year approval. If I remember right, I think it's July, but I'll verify and let you know.
Okay. And then just 2 thoughts for the board on that. One, with that expiring here pretty shortly, the auto dealership zoning amendment would require them to come back before the board, the way that we had referred it to the planning commission. And then just one other thought, with the right-of-way discussions that Deputy Manager Perry is having as it relates to DTN, we could look at using some of our tree planting funding in the future, at least in the public right-of-way on that site, meaning the Lafontaine site, to kind of start reforesting, at least along the edge, to bring the sight line back, at least. I mean, it's going to take decades for the trees to mature, but it might be a good use of our tree fund, which we started 2 years ago and was Treasurer DeShane's idea. Just something that occurred to me last night when I was speaking before the Planning Commission, and thought of it again during all this discussion. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Final comments? Manager Walsh, was that you?
Yes, actually, Trustee Opsmer, that's a great question. And the people who should be replanting the trees is the person who called earlier tonight.
Good point. All right, then we need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Moved by the treasurer, seconded by Trustee Wazinski. Any objection? And we'll adjourn.